There is a type of person who does more work than anyone else in the room and somehow leaves without anyone knowing their name. They arrived before the meeting started. They already knew the solution before the problem was announced. They fixed the thing quietly, filed it away, and moved on before the thank you speech began. They don't have a personal brand. They don't post about their wins. And if you ask them why, they would look at you like the question itself didn't make sense because to them, it doesn't. This is Generation X, born between 1965 and 1980. And their relationship with attention, visibility, and getting things done is one of the most psychologically fascinating patterns of any generation alive. Not because they can't be seen, but because they learned, very early and very specifically, that being seen wasn't the point. Picture a workplace meeting. A problem is on the table. Voices are filling the room. Opinions, theories, suggestions. Somewhere near the back, quietly, one person already ran the numbers in their head 20 minutes ago. They know the answer. They are waiting, not dramatically, not resentfully, just waiting to see if anyone else gets there first. If someone does, they nod and move on. If nobody does, they say it once, plainly, and the meeting ends. They don't stay for the credit. They have other things to do. That scene plays out every day, in offices and warehouses, and emergency rooms, and server rooms across the world. And it didn't come from nowhere. To understand where it came from, you have to go back to the specific conditions that shaped this generation before they ever set foot in a workplace. Generation X were latchkey kids, and not just a few of them. By 1984, roughly 7 million American children between the ages of 5 and 13 were regularly unsupervised after school. 7 million. A whole generation coming home to empty houses, letting themselves in, figuring out what needed to be done, and doing it. No audience, no applause, no one to report back to, just the task and the person doing it. Work doesn't require a witness. A problem solved alone is still a problem solved. The internal satisfaction of having handled something, figured it out, fixed it, moved on, is not diminished by the absence of anyone watching. Psychologists call the internal engine that drives this intrinsic motivation behavior, driven by personal standards and internal satisfaction rather than external reward. Most people need a mix of both. Praise matters. Visibility matters. The applause loop closes the circuit. But when you grow up, where external validation is structurally unavailable, where no parent is coming home to see what you built or fixed, the brain adapts. It builds its own circuit. It becomes the audience for itself. Gen X didn't develop this because they're uniquely virtuous. They developed it because extrinsic motivation requires someone on the other end, and for years, there was nobody there. So they built internal standards that became more demanding than any external critic could ever be. They don't need you to tell them the work is good. They already know whether it is. And this is where the invisibility piece connects to the competence piece in a way that's easy to misread. Gen X doesn't avoid attention because they're shy, or insecure, or suffering from imposter syndrome. They avoid it because they grew up understanding, at a neurological level, that the less people know about you, the safer you are. When you did something embarrassing as a teenager in the 70s or 80s, maybe 10 people knew. Maybe it came up at one party, and then it dissolved. No permanent record, no screenshot, no algorithm surfacing it back to you years later. Privacy was the default condition of human life, and to Gen X, it felt like oxygen, something you didn't notice until it was gone. To broadcast your life online doesn't feel liberating to them. It feels dangerous, exposed, vulnerable in a way their nervous systems were specifically calibrated to avoid. So they watch, they observe, they lurk, and they don't participate, not because they can't, because they remember what privacy felt like, and they are not trading it for engagement metrics. And if you're Gen X watching this right now, you probably recognize something strange about hearing all of this. You see yourself in it, but part of you still feels like it shouldn't be about you. If this is landing, if you recognize this in yourself, or in someone you know, take a moment to like this video. It genuinely helps more people find this conversation. And if exploring the psychology behind how generations were shaped is something you want to keep doing, subscribe. This is exactly the work we do here. The invisibility was never passive. It was strategic, and it connects directly to how they get things done. Here is the inversion that most people miss about Gen X in the workplace. Most people work hard in order to be seen. Gen X works hard so they don't have to be. The logic runs like this: if my competence is undeniable, if my work speaks loudly enough, then I never have to speak loudly about myself. The work becomes the shield. The indispensability is the protection. They can't control whether they'll eventually get laid off. They learned that from watching their fathers give 30 years to a company and get a pink slip during the next downsizing without ceremony or apology. But they can control whether they are the very last person anyone would want to let go. So they make themselves essential, quietly, without fanfare, without waiting for recognition that, in their experience, rarely came anyway. This wasn't just a workplace strategy. It was forged through jobs that would seem prehistoric to younger generations. Paper routes at 5 in the morning, bagging groceries, running cash registers and calculating change in their heads when the system went down because the system going down was their problem to solve. These weren't resume builders. They were evidence, delivered repeatedly, that they could handle things nobody had officially asked them to handle. And they extended this into the physical world in ways that reinforced the same belief. Before Google, information had weight. You spent hours in a library hunting through card catalogs for one book that might contain the answer to one question. When knowledge costs effort to obtain, it holds differently, more texture, more permanence, more ownership. They learned to fix things with their hands, because that was simply what you did. Bike chain slips, flip it over, and figure it out. TV goes fuzzy, smack it until it works, and investigate why. Nobody called a technician. You became the technician. This built a bone-deep belief that with enough patience, almost anything could be mastered. Problems yield to effort. That belief never left. Their relationship with authority follows the same internal logic. They respect competence, not titles. Earn your position through actual skill. They will follow you without question. But if you're an executive who talks well and delivers nothing, zero patience. They watched too many incompetent authority figures make catastrophic decisions throughout their childhoods. Watergate, Vietnam, the AIDS crisis, handled with criminal negligence to extend blind deference to a title. They question authority not as rebellion but as quality control, running a constant competence assessment on everyone around them, including themselves. Here is the paradox that makes Gen X genuinely difficult to understand if you're looking at them from the outside. The most capable person in the room is almost never the loudest. And with Gen X, this isn't modesty, it isn't the performed humility of someone who secretly wants to be asked. It's a genuine psychological orientation that treats visibility as a liability and competence as the only currency that actually holds its value. They are simultaneously the most reliable people in any organization and the least likely to ever tell you that. They will handle the crisis before most people know there is one. They will solve the problem without holding a press conference about it. They show up, no drama, no announcement, do the thing that needed doing, and go home. If you thank them, they'll nod and change the subject. If you don't, they won't mention it. The work was done. That was the point. This was never smallness. It was never low self-esteem dressed up as humility. It was a specific, calibrated, deeply rational response to a childhood that taught them the most important lesson they ever learned. You don't need an audience to do excellent work. The work doesn't care whether anyone is watching, and neither, ultimately, do they. The world runs on people who never asked it to notice them. It always has. Generation X just happened to be the generation shaped precisely, specifically, and at scale to fill that role, and to do it without ever posting about it. If you work with someone like this, or if you are someone like this, what's the thing you've done recently that you're most proud of, that nobody knows about? Leave it in the comments. It might be time for someone to notice. Thank you for watching.